Welcome to another episode of the Optimized Hour here with Coach Gary and Brandon McCurdy. Coach Gary looks like he's at his home studio there in Indiana, and Brandon's also in Indiana in the Fort Wayne region. Well, let's jump right in.
That is controversial, but I don't really care.
Do it, say it.
Consider yourself rebuked, Harvard Business Review.
You have to earn the right to get to the next level.
Process audit, not people audit.
I just want to see this done faster.
How many licks does it actually take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
I was kind of being facetious a little bit.
3,
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
2,
It's true.
1.
But we can cut that out.
The Great Detachment is what Gallup has called disengagement with employees today after some polls. Employees, they stay in the payroll, but they mentally check out. And so productivity's
Those are
down,
marriages
retention's
like
down.
that.
What's that?
I know some marriages like that. It's true.
Engagement's at an 11-year low. They're saying in their current polls. So just some thoughts. Do you see that happening in the companies you're coaching? I guess would be the first question.
Yeah, so
Well,
I'll
I
add
think-
some flavor to it because I did some research on this. So I'll give you some flavor, Gary, so you can ping pong off of it. So the bigger problem that I found with this is they said that it costs us internationally $8.8 trillion a year. So that means that the cost to the business is $8.8 trillion worldwide. So the interesting factor of this is I was listening to a podcast yesterday of Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders obviously wants to, give people 32-hour work weeks. He wants to give them higher minimum wage, a lot of things that are fine ideas because of all of the efficiencies from AI. But here's the problem that gets really interesting with this, because I looked at the numbers. We're only going to make, the World Economic Forum says, we're only going to make about $7 trillion a year based on the efficiencies of AI for the next few years. It's about 30 trillion by 2030. The problem is we're going to lose more money through efficiency than we're going to make up through AI. So it doesn't really matter, like if we add all this cool tech, if we can't get the efficiency back of the people. And so the disconnect of this is, as we'll talk about the more like the on the ground, what it looks like in a business in a second. It's just important to note that like you're not going to be able to like tech your way out of being a bad leader. You're going to have to figure out how to actually get people to do the work. And it doesn't really matter how good you are with AI and all this stuff, which I'm a huge proponent of, and I'm like the champion of all of it. I think it's all great. But I just think as Gary jumps in on this in a second, it's going to be really important for us to note that like this is a real problem. If we can't get it figured out, you can't figure out how to get people to be more engaged and more efficient in their work. It's not like AI is coming to save you. You're going to have to get it figured out. So just wanted to put that flavor to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that are disengaged from their jobs are coming to work because they have to, not because they want to be there. And so, I think that's what we've seen. I think we've seen that in the corporate jobs and when I was in corporate America. And I think now we see it in entrepreneurship. And it's usually less in entrepreneurship, I think, than it is in corporate America. So when you look at these numbers, you're looking at all facets of every type of business. So corporate America is going to be much higher than in entrepreneurship. You're touching people every day. You're involved with them more often. You're mentoring more. They're part of the team. They feel closer to the vision and the culture of the organization. But it doesn't mean it doesn't happen in entrepreneurship. It probably happens less. And I think what I'm seeing right now with disengagement is when we have leaders that aren't focused on making sure their employees are wanting to be there, and not just have to be there. And so, Austin always says that, productivity goes up 34% when somebody wants to be there. And so then that's that switch from a have to employ to a want to employ. I think George Carlin said most people work hard enough not to get fired and get paid just enough not to quit. And that's disengagement. And so, like, how do we create engagement? How do we make sure that the employees that are coming to work every day are engaged? And you find it in our inspiration section of our curriculum where we talk about values and vision and culture. And so in order to have the right person on your staff, you have to have a value alignment and a vision alignment. And so that's probably the first and foremost thing, is making sure you're bringing people into your culture that both align with your values and vision. I think the second thing then is like, how do we protect the culture? How do we make sure the culture is copacetic and cohesive together. And the four things we always push for is, one is you got to make sure people are in the right seats in the organization, performing the right processes, because that's the thing. At the end of the day, I mean, you could be a great leader, you could be great at culture, but your culture is always going to suffer when people feel like they have to pick up the work for other people. When somebody else feels like they're filling in for somebody in order to make sure things are getting done, you're going to have a cultural problem, and people are going to start to disengage. Second thing is that we see with culture is making sure we have people that are the right people in the organization. So you have the right seat, you have the right people, the values and vision we talked about. And the third thing that we have here is goal alignment. And I don't think that's where I think that's the area we don't do enough in, is goal alignment and mission or purpose alignment, and making sure that they understand it. You know, Dylan, this isn't really that new if you think about it. Since 2020, there's been a pretty hard push by employees to go find purpose-driven careers. You know, 67% of the people, I think, quit their job in the Great Resignation cited the lack of emotional paychecks that they had or did not have. And it is our job as leaders to make sure we're driving emotional paychecks. And so one of those paychecks is making sure that somebody can see how their purpose is fulfilled by being a part of this company's purpose. And then more importantly, they can see how their goals are being achieved by helping the company achieve its goals. And if they don't see those two things, it's never going to be anything but a job for them. Engagement's never going to happen. But like as leaders, we have to be willing and able to ask the question of what do you need? Where do you see yourself? And what do you want to achieve? And then from there, position the company to be able to help Dylan achieve those goals. And I always start when this happens is the first question I advise my teams to ask after they've asked, you know, what do you want to do, is do you see yourself being able to achieve it right now? Can you see some of those goals achieved by being here, making the money, working the position you're in? And if the answer is no, then and you value that person, I mean, you want engagement, then you have to invest in them. You have to invest in their growth and where they're going to get to and help them see how they can get there. Because without that, they're never going to engage. They're going to be here because they have to be here, not because they want to be here. And so I think that's probably the biggest ingredient to culture and engagement that I think the world's missing today. Really good book right now out. Highly recommend. It's called Dream Manager. And it talks about helping your employees fulfill their dreams, like where they want to go, where they want to get there. And then, you know, part of that is understanding their purpose. You know, in Rise, we talk about purpose and the importance of purpose and personal purpose versus company purpose. But what really creates engagement is not just when we have the right person sitting in the right seat and they're aligning with our goals, but ultimately when they're aligning with our purpose. Because you want engagement, but as a business owner, I want long-term engagement. And if they can see how being a part of our company for the long term is going to help them fulfill their life's purpose, that's really, truly where the emotional paycheck starts to show up. And that's where I get excited. I get excited about being able to not only help our employees see it, but then help them achieve it. And now, being in a bigger organization, you don't always get the chance to talk to every employee in your organization. But I do get the chance to talk to Brandon and where he wants to be and what he wants to accomplish. And we've had these conversations over the years. And I've seen him go from where he was maybe 3 or 4 years ago to where he's at now. And I think in a better place being a part of Sharper. Brandon, would you agree that Sharper's put you in a little bit better place than you were 5 years ago?
I mean, maybe no, for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that the challenge to this conversation, and I'll push back on you just a little bit, Gary, because I think there's a flip side to this coin which we have to be mindful of. Some people are really, really good at presenting themselves, at answering a question a certain way and making it appear to be as though, you know, they have heart and all of this that goes with the business. And then, you know, an owner finds out 6 months later they were just getting robbed blind by somebody who does a really good job presenting themselves. And so I think there's a side of, we say this statement all the time, which is people respect what you inspect. And so while there is that soft skill conversation that every leader should be able to have and should be able to sit with somebody, I've sat with people, you know, we've sat with business owners many times where it's like, I never thought this guy would steal from me. I never thought that they would rob me blind. And I never thought that, I mean, I had a guy the other day call me and he's like, man, I've had a team member that's been on my team for 5 years. And I just found out they're putting in about 10 of the 40 hours that I was paying them for. And so I think there's a very practical side to this too, which is fleshing out and getting the stated purposes, getting the stated, here's what I'm here to do and here's what I'm trying to accomplish, but also understanding that, you know, at the end of the day, people are not always going to do as they present themselves, and just you as the owner having your hand on that, certainly easier in a smaller business, certainly something that you can do. But the problem so often as a smaller business owner is flipping the switch. And I heard a guy say this recently. He was a Navy SEAL, and he explained it this way. So many times we live in switches, which is we try to flip a switch from I'm an operator to I'm a visionary to I'm an operator to I'm a visionary. And now I'm having a personal conversation, and now I'm tracking down a seller to get a contract, right? So that switches. And the way he described it was it should be dials, not switches. In other words, you don't flip a switch and become a visionary. You dial up the visionariness, and then you dial down the thing, so there's not these drastic jumps. Because I know people have those conversations with their team, and they're like, well, I talked to my team about that. And then when you finally ask them, they're like, great, when? And they'll say, well, I mean, I don't know, when they got hired. Like, great, how long have they been here? 5 years? Like, well, that's not going to work, because, you know, they presented themselves as such in one way. And if you're not constantly looking at now, is their activity aligning with that? If Dylan says, hey, I want to do this, this, and this, but there's not the activity that comes behind it to prove the point, right? I mean, if I say, yes, I'm Gary, man, I love Sharper Business Solutions, I want to make millions of dollars working here, but don't go get on the airplane, don't do a good consult, don't do a good work by our client, then all of the words become very hollow. And I think that's sometimes where leaders get a little frustrated, which is, well, I had that conversation, but they still ripped me off. And I just am always cautious of, yes, with people who show that they align with that and their activity aligns with what they say they want. And so disconnection comes not necessarily by somebody saying, yes, I'm in, yes, I'm out. Disconnection comes from, we need to be able to move, change, pivot, grow, drive as a business. Are you down with that, or are you not? I mean, I'm here with a client tomorrow, and I mean, it's borderline cultish the way these guys are so bought into what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're doing it. And you can see it in the activity, though. It's tied together. So I think that's just a small nuance.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think performance is a big part of it, and that's what we're referred to there. You know, I like the analogy of flipping the switch versus the dial, though. I like that's a good analogy. Although I did see our president flip the switch yesterday and go from diplomatic to non-diplomatic in one big F-bomb word. So that was pretty interesting. He didn't dial that up. He just kind of flipped it.
No. It was a great guy. He was talking about it because he said, you know, they would come home from these missions where they're out there and like your adrenaline is just pumping, and you now have to walk through the door and like hold your 2-year-old daughter and like, you know, be affectionate. And he's like, you try to like flip this switch, and he's like, that's not how it works. Like you dial it. You have to slowly dial it back up and slowly dial it back down. I mean, I could see it in myself when I come home from a consult where it's like the switch is flipped and I'm solving problems, you know, and then you walk through the door and it's like, it's not time to solve problems. You got to dial it back down. You got to put those things in place. So it's good.
Are you allowed to solve problems at home, or is that something that you're not allowed to do?
I'm not as good at it as she is, so I usually stay out of the way. She solves problems better.
I found years ago, I don't solve problems at home. I just come home.
Yeah, what's the old analogy is we agreed when we got married, I'd make all the little decisions, or she'd make all the little ones and I'd make all the big ones. We just haven't had any big ones yet.
Yeah,
so.
You're like, put me in, coach. Put me in.
Once there's a big decision to make, I'll no. My wife is I joke, but she's an incredible human being, and
she's also a big time problem solver, which is why you're so successful, because she allows.
Incredible.
You know, most people don't have a relationship where you can be on the road like you are, and the spouse just runs things, and she's just.
It's an incredible partnership.
Yeah, it really is. A lot done. So you see it in your girls too.
Yeah.
So, do you think there was an exodus kind of around COVID of people not getting emotional paychecks? Do you think they got into a new job and realized that's the same thing? Like they went and looked for a new job, and now we're kind of seeing it at a high. Their Gallup poll saying in 11 years, did people leave their jobs discontented only to find themselves in another job that they're discontent? And if they're looking at leaving their job because they're disengaged, how do they avoid that a third time, right? Getting into a job that they're going to be disengaged because they don't value, because they're not getting that emotional paycheck. How does the employee kind of audit the business before coming in there and being hired by them?
I think there's an upstream problem that has to be addressed first, though, which is businesses are feeling the pinch right now. I mean, there was this artificial growth that came from stimulus checks. And I mean, in a lot of our clients, the real estate market, businesses were flush with cash. I mean, they could afford for somebody not to be efficient. That's not the case right now. I mean, we're going through, like audit your teams, like see where people are doing and what they're doing and how they're doing it, because frankly, you just can't afford it. I mean, I worked with a guy just a few weeks ago, and like we went through all of the different components of the business, and it's like the profit margin is way leaner than it was. And so he's going to have to find efficiencies, and that might be technology, and that might be staff stepping up and doing things. So I think what happened is the worker came back to the workforce, and the company is now saying in the last couple of years here, hey, we have to see production out of you. We cannot afford to have people who aren't producing or bringing something to the table that brings value to the business, where 2020, 2021, it was kind of like, well, the government's going to give us PPP money. Government's going to give us stimulus checks. We're going to get an SBA loan. Cash is flowing into the system, stuff selling for higher. We can afford for people to kind of just take it easy. And even your larger corporations now, they're saying, if you can't show efficiency, we'll get a technology to replace that. That's not a problem. Just going to push the business down. So I think that's what they found. They came back to the workplace, and the measurables all changed, and they're feeling the pain from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole name of this podcast is what people need to do before they start evaluating who they bring in is optimize. They need to optimize their business. And so it's hard to put people in the company when, you're not optimized 100% and bring more people in. And I think, I was just with the team yesterday and talking to them about optimization, because they've done great. They're phenomenal. They've grown a tremendous amount, but they're almost like at a point where they're like, so what is there left for us to do? And I'm like, well, it's time to optimize. And they were like, well, what does that even mean? What does that look like? I'm like, all right, so let's look at your lead channels. So we looked at their lead channels. They have three major lead sources, right? And they're lead to contract, lead to qualified lead, qualified lead to offer to contract, and contract to deal, like they actually closed on it and made money. Like in each channel is vastly different. There's two channels they're crushing it in, and then one channel that they're 50% of, like they're not even close. The ROAS is like 3.5 and so forth. And the problem with it is like, all right, so if we look at this and we look at best case scenario, your best channel, your best conversion, your best acquisition, what is your numbers versus what is your numbers if we had everything coming in at that optimized level? And so the difference was $1.5 million. If they optimized, right? If they got everything dialed in, each lead source dialed in, each acquisition's dialed in, each disposition dialed in, each based on the average cost per contract and all that combined, and they used their best channels to get it done, they would be at $1.5 million more on the exact same spend, right? Without any more labor, without any more anything. And then what happens? People make more money. People make more money, and then you make more money, and the culture's better, and people engage more, and then you have time now to do programs and one-on-one interviews and help them fulfill their goals, and all of that comes back together. And that's what Brandon's talking about. We have to have performance. Like, you have to have companies that don't perform aren't going to optimize, and if they don't optimize, they're not going to be able to help their employees, and they're not going to be able to drive their emotional paycheck. They're going to be constantly putting out fires. They're going to be reactive versus proactive, and everything we're talking about in engagement is through proactivity. You have to be productive or proactive to make sure that you can drive optimization, and optimization ultimately helps people stay engaged better. And so that's what we were just looking at yesterday. Like, literally, if you have a team and you're like, what's next? I feel like we're doing really good. Well, what does this thing look like if you were optimized? Everything was functioning at the highest level of your program. And how much more money would you have made? And that's kind of the next step. And I think from that, then you have freed up time to be able to work on your employees and hire, read the dream manager and focus on that with your employees, and do their purpose exercise and their goal exercise, and create a 1-page plan and help them see how they can get there. And then, show them that, going back to Brandon's point, if they're not performing, they're never going to hit their goals. So, like, that's all how it ties in together. And it's not easy, man. I think the reason why it's so high right now is because it's not easy. And we're in a world right now where everybody wants easy. Right? Brandon talked about flip the switch. Well, it's not just flipping the switch on your demeanor and your personality. It's like people want to flip the switch on marketing. They want to flip the switch on sales. They want to flip the switch on their business performing better. And that's what they want with employees. They're like, I just rather flip a switch. And they honestly think AI is the way to flip the switch so that they can get there quicker. But AI is just going to give out information that you put into it. And so, you can't really truly optimize, at least right now, you can't truly really optimize with just AI. We still need people, and we still need them optimize the performance.
Yeah,
I think it's an interesting study you just showed where it's like AI's proficiency in the money we'll make, it still fails in comparison to what we're going to lose if we don't become better leaders and we don't optimize our employees better.
Yeah, like I said, the numbers are just kind of staggering when you think about how much money. I mean, if you say like the market cap for our entire world, there's another $8 trillion of people just sitting there scrolling Facebook when they're supposed to be working. There's $8 trillion of people who are trying to carry 3 jobs at the same time, working from home, working for 3 companies virtually at the same time. There's $8 trillion of money that's just getting flushed down. And so to the worker, it's one of those things where it's like, if you would just perform up to your ability in the space, you will stand out. Like that's what the study should tell you is like, hey, look, if you're willing to put in 8 hours work for 8 hours pay, if you're willing to go in there and help the business find efficiencies and grow. I mean, we know this. There's the most successful pick the role is not the person who has the most talent. It's the person who actually puts in the time. I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day and he was like, he's doing sales for a company. He's like, I would finish my day and I would go home and I would get my list out and I'd keep working my list. And I keep working it on my own time and trying to do this. I'm not telling you to become a workaholic, but if you took the average business owner and you asked them, how many hours do you work in a week? They would tell you some crazy number, 70, 80 hours a week. If you did a time study on them, you'd probably find that's not actually true. I find most of the time we are often delusional with how much time we actually work. And when you set that as the culture, then all of a sudden everybody on the team looks and says, well, shoot, I mean, he's leaving at 3 o'clock every day. I'll leave it too. He doesn't show up until 10. I'll show up at 11. Like it's a culture thing that we've created where there's inefficiencies. And I know that the mind of an owner, which I get it, which is I'm paying them to be here. They should have to be here for this. But to Gary's point from earlier, purpose, culture, all of that, you are the champion of it or you're the killer of it. And so if you don't want to be the person that they're looking at as the standard, then go hire another CEO, put somebody else in that seat and go sit in the owner's box. And then that works fine. That person can work themselves, but there's got to be, it's an old picture, but it's this idea of leaders pushing from the back, not running out in front. Like we push people forward, we help people forward, we get them where they want to go. We don't make it so difficult.
Moving on here. The interest rates have been maintained by the Fed at 4.25%, 4.5%. I think it's been probably since even prior to President Trump coming into office, kind of a looming thing that they would be lowered, and they the can keeps getting kicked down the road. Mm-hmm. Particularly just as a business owner, but particularly in the real estate space where there's lots of loans. I think probably some companies kind of been looking forward to that. How do we handle knowing that's going to maintain at least to the end of, towards the end of the year?
I mean, I don't think it should maintain. I think if the guy wants to keep his job because his job's over at the end of the year, he might want to comply with the president of the United States and what the world needs right now. I mean, I've never seen somebody just deliberately low. I don't want my job in 6 months from now, so I'm just not going to do it. I mean, because that's where we're at. The inflation.
Wait, no, I thought isn't that what Joe Biden did?
I mean, no, that's what Joe Biden did.
Oh, okay.
Joe never was in charge. It was just Joe.
Breaking news.
Yeah. But I mean, the inflation's gone. There's money pouring in from tariffs. We are cutting debt like crazy. We could cut debt so much more as a country right now if we lowered interest rates. It'd be incredible what we could do. position ourselves in a stronger power, bolster our military even more. Like there's so much our country could benefit from lower interest rates. Not just that, the American people, which is small entrepreneurs. The American people are made up majority of small entrepreneurs that employ most of the people in the United States. And so they get that break, they get that tax advantage. And, I think between that, if we could get interest rates lowered and we could get the healthcare costs down, they're talking about cutting healthcare costs, which would be incredible. Dylan, the other day I had to go get a pill. I have this thing called leaky gut. And so the doctor says, well, we got to heal your gut because that's what's causing your autoimmune, blah, blah, blah. So let's get you on this pill that heals your leaky gut. And I get on it and I go to the pharmacy, Walgreens pharmacy down here. And the guy walks up to the window and he's like, I got your prescription here, but there's something wrong. I got to get my manager. And I'm like, well, what's wrong? He's like, the price. I'm like, well, I was told it was pricey. And he was like, I think there's something wrong. I've never seen anything this high. What do you think 90 days worth of it's 155 pills. How much do you think 155 pills should cost somebody to help heal their gut? Just guess.
Several $100s.
Couple $100. Yeah.
$7,200.
Oh my word. You want to hear a crazy part about this, Gary? Is if you would have gone to a veterinarian and gotten the exact same medication, it would have been like a tenth of the price.
Probably.
If you ever buy animal medication, it's so much cheaper. It's the craziest thing.
All right, Joe Rogan, relax.
I'm just saying. No, yeah, I'm not selling you horse dewormer or nothing like that.
No, but it's a pill called Creon, and it's supposed to help with repairing the gut lining and help digest your food. And it's working, right? Like I'm doing well with it, but it's like unbelievable that this pill costs $7,200. And the guy is just flabbergasted. He's like, I need to get my manager. I'm like, no, okay, go get your manager. The manager comes back and says, no, that's pretty much what it is. Now, they were able to pull a couple things and get it down to like $5,000 for me, but I still had to pay $5,000 for this stupid pill. It is insane. And so that's what's hurting the American people today, right? Like it's the interest rates, it's a high health costs. And I'm not, trying to advocate for like one health system or anything stupid like that. But like to have the inflated margins that this world has on costs to help people, you can't even get me started right now. My sister is literally dying from a liver problem. She's never drank in a day in her life. She has an autoimmune disease that runs in our family, and it attacks the liver. My grandma died at 56 years old. My sister is 56 years old. She died of the liver failure at 56. My sister's dying right now of liver failure. It's completely failed. Her liver is done. And she's building up ascites in her belly, but belly. She's had to have it drained. I think they took 30 pounds of water off of her last week. And they told her, like, you need a liver transplant. There's nothing we can do for you at this point. And so, like, we're praying hard that in the next 3 weeks, she'll be able to get a liver transplant. Now, she's got a donor, a live donor, and they're willing to move forward. The one thing that's holding them back right now? The healthcare system wants $1 million to do the transplant. So we're going to weigh the life of a human being, the value of somebody over financials. And I get frustrated about that because it's like, that's where people are right now in America. They're struggling to pay their bills. They're struggling to get groceries. They're struggling to get loans. We could stimulate the economy in such an amazing way if people are able to borrow money. The reason why the economy was so good from 2020 was because we pumped a lot of money into it. Well, like, what if we don't pump it in artificially this time? What if we get it in through tariffs? What if we get it in through people getting loans and paying back loans? Everybody thrives in that environment. The world thrives in that environment. And for somebody to sit back and just deliberately go, I have the power to make everybody in the world suffer, and I'm not going to lower interest rates. We talk about Trump playing God. This guy that's keeping this down or keeping the interest rates where they are is literally playing God with people's lives right now. And so I think that's very frustrating to me. Like when somebody can just say a word and change the directory of people's lives and their financial situation, and they're unwilling to do that, that's pure ego. It's evil. Yeah. It's just evil.
I think all these stories that we've kind of got on here today kind of tie together a little bit. You see employee disengagement. You're going to see the housing markets, in a weird spot right now that hasn't been in since 2007. People, the sentiments are not good on what's going on. all of that is derived from the fact that the economy should be doing better than it is, and Jerome Powell is gonna find out. The idea that he's not getting rehired, he's done when this is over. You've already got the people that are going to take the guy who wants the job from him already came out and said, well, if I get the job, I'm going to lower rates on day one. You've got Scott Bessent saying he wants to be the next Secretary of the Treasury. Like all of this is coming down the line. And it's just ridiculous, which is this is going to happen at some point. It should just happen when it's naturally supposed to happen. And the majority of economists are looking at it and saying all of the markers say you should lower the rates. And it's somebody making a political statement that says, I can get my way and I'm going to do it. And so we get to all suffer on that behalf. And so it's silly. And to your point, Gary, it's causing a lot of just frustration with people looking and saying it feels like the game is just rigged against me, and at any moment you could flip a switch and make the rules of the game much more appealing to lower middle upper middle class, the 99% of Americans, and they're just not going to do it, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you can change it instantly. I mean, May, I believe, if you could fact check me on this, I'm not 100% positive, but I think May is when the relief for housing and COVID and all that kind of ran out. So like the amount of inventory coming into the market right now from defaults and things like that on the housing market is going to inflate the inventory pretty high. So you got interest rates high, you got a lot of inventory. People aren't going to move, and then what's that going to do to the housing market? It's going to drive the ARVs down. And so people that are fix and flipping and trying to make a living in this, they may have bought wrong. I mean, they may not have bought wrong when they bought, but if the rates, if things don't change, they could be upside down very soon. And this is very similar to what happened in 2008, where you had a lot of inventory. The average cycle of a house sitting on the market was 8 to 9 months in 2008. A house would set, perfectly good house, completely rehab, set for 8 to 9 months. I remember, Brandon, people putting cars as a part of, if you buy this house, there's a car included, or you're going to furnish
if it was on a lake or something like that. Yeah.
Or like TVs and things like that. TVs were getting popular back then, where it's like we put a 90-inch screen TV on the wall for you if you bought this house, and they had to create incentives. And so Jacob just bought a house, and one of the things they had to do to create an incentive for him to buy it was, they got a special program to buy down the interest rate. And Jacob's like, yeah, like he paid more for this house, but since they bought the interest rate down over the house the other house he was thinking about, the payments were lower, right?
Right.
And what does the interest rate do to our America? It makes affordability happen.
When people, you can't simultaneously have inventory increasing and a housing shortage at the same time. That should tell you something. That should tell you something is not right. When we look and say as a country, we're about 6 million doors short of what we need to actually properly house everybody. But at the same time, now inventory is going to start spiking. That doesn't make that tells you that the rules are not right, that the parameters aren't set properly. So whether you want to say it's interest rates, or whether you want to say it's, a rental culture where more people are renting than before, and so that's why houses are more available, or you want to say people got these insane rates at COVID and they don't want to lose them. Whatever it is, the markers, the performance indicators are telling you something is not right and you need to go back downstream. And for most economists, they will tell you the answer is, if you just lower the rates, it would solve a lot of these problems. I mean, they're just saying like just a quarter point would at least get people to the point where they would look and say, okay, now I'm ready to give up my killer interest rate and go move to the house that I want to move in. But instead, they're just either sitting pat, or to your point, Gary, they're losing their house because they don't have the same revenue flowing in artificially from COVID, whatever the case might be. So it's good.
On that note, as the real estate market cools down, becomes more of a buyer's market, how does an investor kind of pivot to, especially like wholesaling, these sorts of things, to pick up more houses? But then I think on the flip side, it's gonna be harder to find people to sell the contracts to, and those sorts of things. So what's kind of some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you have to factor in is all the regulatory stuff happening. So states are now getting to where some of the states are either making it illegal or difficult to do wholesaling. So you have to factor that part in first, which is going to be challenging because, for example, like you have your big builders, and the big builders don't want to go find land. They don't want to go develop land. They just want to build houses. Your DR Hortons of the world, they just want to build. Your average flipper doesn't want to go do direct response marketing. They don't want to go buy houses from sellers. They just want to flip the thing. And so what the wholesaler is doing is providing a service that gets it to the door for them, and they can flip the property. With all of this going around, you're going to cut the legs out from what we call the the SIPOC of the business, from that flow that should naturally be happening, should be taking place. And if they don't fix that, you're going to find people not willing to make investments on the front of the funnel to market, to get deals, and to get contracts, and to keep moving things down the pipeline. And just the same as we had during COVID, where there's a supply chain issue, you're going to see that same supply chain issue happen. And so you're not going to feel it tomorrow, but 6 months from now, when people are going and looking at houses and they all need work and none of them are taken care of, and none of them have been, repaired or flipped by a licensed contractor. And now we're going to get, the buyer on the end buyer is going to either move into a house that's subpar, or they're going to move into a house they can't afford and they're going to have to buy something new because it's not been renovated. We're all going to feel the pain of that. And so it's just this horrible ripple effect that takes place everywhere when they don't make the incentives right. And they're not incentivizing people to go investing in flipping houses. They're not incentivizing people to go do these things to provide the inventory at a reasonable rate, which solves all the other problems. And until they fix that, people are going to go, and these guys here's the thing that's crazy, right, Gary? Like, we work with these people all day. These guys are going to go make money. They make money. That's what they do. And so they're going to do it somehow. And if you keep changing the rules, the only person that gets hurt is the end user, because they don't get that service anymore. They don't get that product anymore. And that guy, I mean, how many times have we seen guys, they'll move in real estate with the market and they'll move to a different place, and whoever their customer was prior is not getting the service they were getting before. And so they got to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I think guys are just going to have to adjust. I mean, that's what we've done. You have to be a chameleon if you're in real estate. You have to be willing to change and adjust and match the market and what the market's needs and demands are. Brandon's not wrong, though. I mean, at the end of the day, that need change and demand change will cause you to have to change what you do. And when that happens, people lose out. People are going to lose. I think there are people out there right now that are wholesaling aren't going to be in real estate at all anymore. I think there are guys that are out there that are really, really heavy and fix and flip. And as the market shifts, they're going to get stuck. They're going to get caught, and they're going to get in trouble, and then they're going to be without, and they're going to lose money. And their investors are going to get hurt, and so it has a ripple effect. It goes all the way back to the actual money investor too. So when you got all this stuff happening, somebody's funding a lot of this, whether it's a bank or a private lender. And when they start getting hurt, then they stop giving loans. And so, then it triples back down again. And so I think, it's an in and out type of flow that causes an effect on the customer and the investor. And they lose at the end of the day. And so that's what we saw in 2008. 2008 was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And, if you're preparing for a time like that, one thing I heard back then, and I didn't heed the knowledge and do a good job with it, but everybody's like, get the cash. Get the cash. Cash is king in a down market. And so anybody that has cash is going to be, on top of their game. They're going to have the ability to thrive through this time. But if your business is built around money coming in, or a lending business, or you borrowing money from a lender of some kind, and that dries up and then your business is done, you're going to be in a bad place. So you do definitely want to be in a position of having strong cash position as we make and shift through market shifts. It's what pulls people through. And so if you're not, and you're leaning on other methods and ways to be able to get your business through this downturn, it's probably going to be a rough road for you. I know for me, it was that way. I remember 2008, and it shifted, and I got all my money from banks, and guess what they stopped doing? Well, we're not lending right now. And even private lenders are like, man, well, I mean, with, where we are right now, with interest rates so high, it's almost impossible to get money from a private lender without it being too high. So it left people, and especially me in 2008, in a really bad, vulnerable spot. And then, make it worse. Political things and rules and regulations change then too, Brandon, just like they're changing now. They reassess taxes in our area, and my cash flow was gone, and my capital was gone. I couldn't sell it and get active income. I wasn't cash flowing anymore. It left me in bankruptcy. So you got to be willing to adjust. You better be doing it now. You better be adjusting ahead of time. You should be identifying in your real estate companies any single points of failure in your business, whether it's people, process, lending, products, and starting to pivot away from those single points of failure, or at least have a backup plan. So if you're predominantly wholesale right now, and you can see all these things happening, and from Pennsylvania to New York, and then even more of these states are becoming attorney states where you have to close with an attorney. I was just talking to a client the other day that's dealing with it right now. They have 20 lawsuits out right now where their sellers are trying to back out selling their house because it's an attorney state, and they sold their house and they knew what they were doing, and the capital law was explained to them of what they were signing. It was even explained to them by the buyer's real estate attorney, only to go to another attorney, and he's like, oh, you're not, you're being taken advantage of, and you need to do this, or a realtor said that you're being taken advantage of. And so all these things have to be navigated properly in order for you to maintain success through a market shift. But the guys just put their head in the ground and they act like it's not coming. I just think they're foolish, and we've been saying this probably for a year now, Brandon. If you're great, you'll be good. If you're good, you'll be gone.
Yeah. I mean, very tangibly. I mean, I've been telling everybody lately, it's completely recreate your underwriting. You got to go back and have your guys walk properties with construction and tell them, this is how much it costs to flip a property now. This is how much it costs to do flooring. This is how much it costs to do this stuff. And if you get nothing else out of this, sit down with whoever is comping your deals, your properties in real estate, and just go back through it with them and write it more conservatively, because you're going to end up with stuff in the pipeline, to Gary's point, that is going to hurt you bad. And you don't want to do that. We're seeing, spreads come down a little bit. We're seeing on flips, they stay on the market longer, meaning you're not making much off of those. So don't live with the math in your head of 2022, 2023. Redo the math, throw it out the window, be more aggressive with what it's going to cost you to turn it. I was with somebody last couple weeks ago. I mean, they're comped, what they're getting on the salesperson is giving them as the comp, and what it actually cost them to flip was dramatically different. And you've got to sit down and just go back through that at least component, so that, even if it does go sideways, it hurts, it doesn't kill you. And so just make sure you're set up properly.
Yeah, that's true.
Along with the interest rates obviously not going down and the market softening, there's some talk of Section 8 being reduced. So for somebody who likes to buy and hold, maybe has some Section 8, looking into developing more Section 8, what should kind of be their play if tenants are going to get less money, if looking at new properties that, now we're going to have potential tenants that aren't getting as much money, stay away from Section 8 altogether. Obviously these are, government funded things that, based upon who's in charge, are going to be added to or cut.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so state by state. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they have a bunch of Section 8, and the property that they have, it's not at risk. I mean, the great thing about Section 8 is the government pays their bills first, so you get all your money usually out the gate, which is a nice touch. If you're over levered on it, it's probably something you need to consider. If it's part of a mixed portfolio, you're probably in a little bit better spot. The other side of the coin, which is in that environment, usually if you lose your tenants, you can sell the properties at a break even or at a profit. So you're not out the game altogether. If it's part of a large portfolio and it's part of a blended strategy, you're probably fine. If it's everything you've got and you're planning on it for the next 30 years, you probably need to take a look at it and make sure, because there's all sorts of issues that are going to come up with this. Either your urban hubs are going to spread out and they're going to need more of that Section 8 in suburban areas, or it's all going to contract back to the urban areas once we don't need as much parking, once we don't need as much shopping. And if those things come back in, then to your point, it's easier for the government to centralize into bigger locations and Section 8 people that way versus putting them in single family homes. I think you just have to look at the strategy. Again, same thing, re-underwrite everything under the understanding that the rules can change at any second. But, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, these are people where they're going to have somewhere to live. The government has kind of made a social contract with them, if you will, that we're going to help you with that. They're not going to pull the rug out from under them in 10 seconds. It's going to be a slow burn, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think it's just like any strategy that you have as an entrepreneur. Like, you got to stay vigilant of where your ship is sailing. Make sure there's no icebergs out there that you're going to hit and sink. And if you're not pivoting and staying ahead of that, if you don't have a business coach that's helping you see that, like, you know, listen, this team I was with yesterday, they're super smart guys, super smart. And they do an amazing job for their customers. And but you know, within an hour, because we've seen it 100 times or more, right? Like, we have wisdom. Wisdom is the power to see things in patterns. It wasn't very long before I said, hey, I see a pattern here, and I see this is what you need to adjust and what you need to do. And they're like, man, like, we didn't have you on today, I'm not sure we would have adjusted that, you know? So, like, it's good to have people around you that help coach and guide you to these proper ways. And, you know, I got a lot of gray hair, and Dylan's got no hair, but I got a lot of gray hair. And the gray hair is from years of wisdom at this point, you know. Brandon, you're starting to catch me. And I know. And so, like, when you've been doing this for 25 years and coaching people at different levels, you see things that other people don't see. And so, like, I think it's important for people to stay vigilant. It's important for them to adjust their goals. I think it's important for them to adjust their strategy. And more importantly, I think it's good for them to get people around them that have wise experience and can help guide them in those changes. So that's what I would suggest people do. It's hire sharper.
Well, and not to pat Gary on the back any harder. Not that he needs it, but, you know, it's one thing to have coaches where they've been doing it for 25 years, but are they doing it right now today? Are they talking to businesses right now today? Are they sitting in offices with companies today? Because to the point of this whole conversation, which is the times they are a-changing, and if you're not actively seeing it in different markets, different places at different times, you're going to miss stuff. And you're going to say, well, I mean, this is what they did over here. And it's like, that may not apply to you. I mean, I was with a guy, Gary, we were at a mastermind, you know, a few months ago, and there was a guy who just got eviscerated at a mastermind. You know, he got it handed to him hard. Well, then I sat in his office, and the thing that he was just getting ripped on was something that was very specific to his situation in his market, that he got some horrible advice at this mastermind that would have tanked his business, but they didn't sit with him for 16 hours and suss out what the problem actually was and what the issue actually was and what was actually going on to solve the problem. And so you got to be really careful, because, you know, there's a lot of advice out there, and you can sit in a group, in a peer group, and hear something and be like, well, I got to go do that. And it might be the worst thing in the world for your business. You know, the same medicine that will heal you will also kill you. So you got to know what to take, when to take it, and how to take it. And I think that's one of the biggest services we provide. Not that this is a commercial, is just the exposure to see what happens, to know what's taking place, and know when to pivot and what to do with it. So in things like this, where, you know, Trump comes out and says, well, you know, we're going to cut Section 8, somebody might go sell all your Section 8, run, do it now, you know? And it's like, okay, hold on a sec. Let's pump the brakes. Let's take a step back. Let's definitely go reanalyze the portfolio. Let's create an emergency plan. If that happened, what would we do? But these people got to live somewhere. And guess what happens if you cut Section 8? There's a trickle-down effect that happens. Those people move down to houses that are less nice, and the people who are in the houses that are nicer move down to those houses, and so forth and so on. There's a scaling down effect that takes place. So you got to figure that out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about something. You know, these groups and the people go and they connect with others and get, you know, information like you were just talking about. You know, you have to stay mindful of where you are and what your business needs are and what your business changes need to be. I was just talking to a guy the other day, and he was telling me about how he got into stocks, and he started investing a lot in stocks and the stock market. And the reason for it is because he went to a group, and the group was like, this guy's like, I'm diversifying, I'm getting into these stocks, and I've got $1 million in stocks right now. And, you know, it's where it's at, you know, real estate's taking a crash. So you gotta diversify, So this guy gets to him. He's like, "Hey man, like I need to know what you're doing." He's like, "Well, I got this spreadsheet and it helps me analyze the deals and the stocks and it tells me where to spend my money and when to sell, when to buy, and all that." He's like, "Oh man, can I get a copy of that?" And he's like, "Sure." So he sends him a copy of it. He says, "Hey, which ones are you jumping in on?" He's like, "We got these 8 stocks. I'm jumping on these 8 stocks." So the guy says, "Oh, that's great." He takes some money. I don't know how much it was, pretty substantial amount. Let's say $500,000, and he starts investing in all these stocks. And then wakes up the other day, and not too long ago when the tariffs started hitting, and guess what?
No.
Stocks were plummeting. He's like,
Yeah.
"Oh no, I'm losing everything. I'm losing my fortune." And he calls the other guy. He's like, "Man, how bad is it for you?" He's like, "Bad for me." He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, no, you same stocks, right? Like you have to be, your millions got to be gone. He's like, "Oh no, bro, I sold last week."
No.
It's all, I got out of it. Like I'm not in stocks anymore. And I completely pulled out. And that's kind of what I see sometimes in business. The guys go and get around other people and are like, "You know what the next great thing to do is? Do this." And they go, first of all, they don't analyze whether or not the guy even needs it. They don't understand whether or not their business needs it. They don't understand if this is actually going to hurt or help that company. It's just they're in a snapshot view of what they're doing that they think's great in that moment. And they go sell it like because it's an ego thing to be like, "I'm on top of it. I'm out there in front of everybody else." And they get everybody else bought in on it. And guess what? They bail on it not too long after. It doesn't work for them. They fail. They lose money. And they don't go back bragging about how they lost money the next mastermind or the next group.
Yeah.
They just talk about the next great thing that they're doing. And, and everybody else is left in the wake. And I think that's where you got to be careful. You got to be careful, who you listen to and what type of advice you get. I'll tell you what, in the world of social media today, everybody's an expert. If you don't believe me, just turn on TikTok right now. You can get about 90,000 different people's opinions on how to run the country.
Yes. And what's one day you're an internal health medicine expert. The next day you're an international policy expert. The next day you're something else expert. So it's definitely something where stay vigilant.
Very vigilant.
A lot of overlap, I feel like, in these things. Brandon, just as we exit, kind of a final thought. Obviously, both you guys are in offices regularly and see a lot of issues, and just kind of put a bow on it.
In regards to the whole entire ecosystem, what we talked about today.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it ties all together so nicely, which is the market right now. The statement Gary made a second ago that we've said probably 1,000 times, which is you have to be great right now. Good's not going to cut it. And that relies on you actually doing the work to know that you're great, not just assuming and saying it. I say with more places where it's like all rock stars here, man, it's all rock stars. Well, then we dive deep and we find that there's definitely room for growth and improvement, which is great. That means there's opportunity if there's room for growth or improvement. I never walk into a business. Nobody hires a business coach who's not incredibly talented at business. They could go make money we talked about, like we've seen guys shift from industry to industry to industry, and they all make plenty of money because they're just talented people. The upside that we're looking for here is the markets that are going to shift around you, the changes in technology, the changes in the workforce and what they want out of that job and what their expectation is of that job and what they're expecting you to provide for them by the sake of purpose and meaning and giving them a vision for the future. That has all changed. It's all different. And if you don't adjust to that, you'll wake up one day and be like, "Man, it just seems like I'm not able to get it going like I used to get it. I used to just go out there and sell it." I was working with a guy years ago, old man. And he's like, "Man, any moment now, I could walk out in that corner and I could sell something. I'm fine." His business was we were trying to fix some things. "I don't need to fix all this stuff. I could walk out on the corner and I could sell fruit tomorrow." And I was like, "You could, but Whole Foods is going to bury you. Target's going to bury you. You're going to sell only so much fruit." And so I think there's a mental shift that has to take place. And the key to the idea is not just being a business leader. The key word is being a leader. And if you can't figure that part out, then none of the other stuff's even going to be on the table for you. You're not going to be having conversations about what you're going to be doing with AI. You're not going to be looking for the next high-level talented hire. If you can't figure out the talent or the leader part, the business part's not going to exist. And so to put it all together, choppy waters right now and coming, figure out the leadership part. And once you see that happen, then everything comes down off of that, and then be willing to do the work of a leader. I've been just very passionate about this lately because I keep seeing it where guys set really high aspirations. And, I feel like our parents and our grandparents understood, like, if you wanted something big, it required a lot of work. It required that you put in the actual work. And I see a lot now where it's like, well, we can get things so quickly and everything's so efficient. I don't actually have to put in the work. That's not the case. Like if you want big things, that looks like 8, 10, 12, 16-hour days. That does not look like 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. And if you don't want it, that's nothing wrong with that either. If you're good with what you have and you want to go do your thing, that's great. But if you set the aspirations there, you build a team for it. I'll finish with this and I'll be done. I'm on a rant. I'll get off of it. I heard a guy say this the other day, which is the moment you decide I'm going to hire people is the moment it stopped becoming about you. Because you just asked somebody else to join your cause. You just took on responsibility for their family, their future. You took on that responsibility. And so if you're not putting in the work, it's not just, well, I'm not going to get what I want. You decided you wanted to grow this thing. You could have made plenty of money by yourself, but you didn't. You decided you want to have people around you. And when you did that, you decided I'm going to take on the responsibility for them. So be efficient, pay attention to the market, grow your company, be a leader, because there's people counting on you. And if you don't want them counting on you, that's fine. Go be a solopreneur, go crush it. But if you're going to take responsibility for people, lead up, get the right people. So that's my rant.
Gary, any final thoughts?
I mean, I think everything summarizes up in the words, everything rises and falls on leadership. I think you have to decide, do you want the team you have or do you want the team that is going to get you to where you need to be? And that includes you. And if you're not willing to level up as a leader, then you're probably not going to level up your business. And so I think, you can drop away all the distractions of everything we talked about today and understand there's a lot of it you don't control. But the one thing you control 100% is you. You control how you research, you control how you plan, you control how you lead, you control how much anxiety you have, you control all those things. You're in control. It's your call, it's your decision. And what you don't control is who's gonna lower the interest rates. What you don't control is if we go to war. What you don't control is the cost of living. You don't control those things. You do control your actions, your beliefs, your hard work, your perseverance. You control how you lead other people. And so at the end of this today, I just say everything rises and falls on leadership. Rise up.
All right. Well, that concludes another episode of
Gary.
the Optimized Hour.
So clip it, post it, make it known.
We've got it's not necessarily new at this point, but a newer tool. We've been put out the Coach Gary AI, so we'll have a link to that. It's free. Just add it to your Chat GPT. We were talking about it before we went live on here, and so just a good tool to add to the custom GPTs there. So anyways, like, subscribe, and to this podcast. Appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.
And it's controversial, but I don't really care.
Do it, say it.
Consider yourself rebuked, Harvard Business Review.
You have to earn the right to get to the next level.
Process audit, not people audit.
I just want to see this done faster.
How many licks does it actually take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
I was kind of being facetious a little bit.
3,
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
2,
Screw.
1.
But we can cut that out.